Donald Trump never thought he'd see. A massive loss in a state he's long treated as political bedrock has shaken his campaign and sent a clear signal across the national landscape. This wasn't a narrow miss or a technical setback. This was a political warning shot, and it landed right in the heart of Trump country. For years, Texas has been central to Trump's image of dominance and inevitability. It has symbolized strength, loyalty, and control. But that image took a serious hit, and the response from Trump and his allies tells the story. The confidence has faded, the messaging has turned defensive, and the blame game has begun. Behind closed doors, advisors are scrambling to explain what went wrong in a place that was never supposed to be competitive. This loss matters because it exposes a deeper problem. Texas isn't just another state. It's a cornerstone of Republican electoral math. When cracks appear here, they force a reassessment everywhere else. Campaign strategists are now quietly reworking turnout assumptions and voter enthusiasm models, recognizing that the Trump coalition may be showing signs of fatigue, even in territory once considered untouchable. What we're seeing now is not strength, it's urgency. Louder attacks, broader claims, and escalating rhetoric are often signs of pressure, not power. Political panic doesn't always look like retreat. Sometimes it looks like overreaction. And tonight, that reaction is impossible to miss. Stop everything and look at Texas tonight, because what just happened here is nothing short of political shockwaves. Donald Trump, long regarded as untouchable in the Lone Star State, has suffered a historic loss that no one in his orbit saw coming. Texas has always been more than just a state for Trump. It has been a symbol of invincibility, a reliable fortress in national elections, and a cornerstone of his political identity. To lose here is not just an electoral setback, it's a moment that sends ripples across the national political landscape. For decades, Texas has been treated by Republican strategists as the ultimate stronghold, a place where conservative messaging and Trump's personal brand seem to resonate effortlessly. The state's enormous voter base, combined with its influence in the Electoral College, has long made it a pillar of Trump's strategy. Yet, in what is being described as a massive and unanticipated defeat, Trump has fallen short of expectations, shaking a foundation that was assumed to be rock solid. Political analysts are calling it an earthquake in the campaign, noting that even narrow losses in Texas carry outsized significance. Voter sentiment in Texas is shifting, and the numbers tell a story that cannot be ignored. Early data suggests a combination of factors contributed to the setback: demographic changes, increased turnout among younger and more diverse voters, and growing disillusionment among some traditional Trump supporters. These trends highlight a broader national phenomenon. A campaign that thrived for years on a narrative of certainty is now confronting reality in a way that is both stark and unsettling. Political strategists are poring over exit polls, turnout patterns, and county-level shifts, trying to understand why the state that once seemed untouchable has suddenly become competitive. This loss is more than a numbers game. It's symbolic. Texas has long been considered the crown jewel of Republican dominance, a state where victory margins reinforce Trump's image of inevitability. Now, that image is being questioned. The shock is not only internal to the campaign, but also resonates with voters, pundits, and opponents nationwide. The defeat opens the door to a political narrative that frames Trump as vulnerable, even in places that were previously considered secure. Competitors are already using Texas as a case study, suggesting that if he can lose here, he could be at risk elsewhere. The psychological impact of this loss cannot be overstated. For a candidate who has built his brand on confidence, resilience, and dominance, a major setback in Texas represents both a challenge and a warning. It forces the campaign to confront new realities, reconsidering strategies, messaging, and voter outreach. The ripple effects extend beyond Texas as campaign advisors and political analysts immediately turn their attention to other traditionally safe states that could now be in play. The loss challenges assumptions that have underpinned Republican strategy for years and forces a reconsideration of how electoral coalitions are maintained in a changing political environment. Ultimately, the significance of Trump's Texas loss is both immediate and long-term. In the short term, it reshapes campaign strategy, messaging, and media narratives. In the long term, it forces a reevaluation of political strongholds once considered immutable. Texas is not just a state, it is a statement about power, loyalty, and influence. Losing here is a wake-up call, a signal that voter dynamics are evolving, and no campaign, no matter how dominant it appears, can take victory for granted. In the end, the question is no longer whether Trump can win in Texas. It's whether the campaign can survive the shock of a defeat that threatens to redefine the political map. And in the world of U.S. politics, a loss of this magnitude sends a message far beyond state lines. The era of assumed dominance may be over, and the road ahead is suddenly far less predictable. The headlines out of Texas aren't the only story. Behind the scenes, Donald Trump's campaign is in full scramble mode. Advisors, strategists, and close allies are reportedly working around the clock to contain the fallout from a massive loss in a state once considered untouchable. What voters saw at the polls was only the tip of the iceberg. Inside the campaign, there is a level of urgency and chaos that has rarely been seen in modern political history. Messaging shifts by the hour, defensive narratives are being amplified, and blame is quietly being assigned, signaling a team struggling to regain control of the narrative. For years, Trump's campaign strategy has been characterized by confidence, aggressive messaging, and a sense of inevitability. Losing in Texas disrupts that playbook entirely. Advisors who once touted the state as a guaranteed win are now facing difficult questions about strategy, voter outreach, and the shifting political landscape. According to insiders, there is a palpable sense of tension as campaign officials grapple with how to respond publicly while also recalibrating for upcoming contests. The scramble is not just about optics, it's about survival, both in the state and nationally. Messaging changes are among the most visible signs of the campaign's behind-the-scenes scramble. Social media posts, public statements, and rally speeches have taken on a more defensive tone, emphasizing loyalty among core supporters while downplaying the scale of the Texas loss. Analysts point out that this shift reflects a common pattern in political campaigns facing unexpected setbacks. When control is lost, overcorrection and rapid narrative adjustments often follow. The urgency is unmistakable, and the campaign's public communications now read as reactive rather than proactive. Fundraising and coalition management are also under pressure. Texas has long been a critical engine for campaign donations and volunteer mobilization. With the state suddenly competitive, key donors and allies are reassessing their commitments. There is a growing recognition that if Texas can slip away, other strongholds may be more vulnerable than previously assumed. This has led to an increase in high-level strategy meetings, data analysis sessions, and emergency outreach to key supporters, all aimed at shoring up both the narrative and the numbers. The psychological impact on the campaign cannot be underestimated. A massive loss in Texas sends a signal not only to voters, but also to the internal team. Confidence among staff and advisors is reportedly strained, and debates over next steps have intensified. Some insiders suggest that this has created friction within the campaign, as differing opinions clash over messaging, target demographics, and resource allocation. In many ways, the scramble reflects a campaign trying to reassert control in a rapidly changing political environment, where yesterday's assumptions no longer hold true. Political analysts say that this behind-the-scenes panic could have ripple effects nationally. Campaigns thrive on momentum, perception, and the appearance of inevitability. When one of the most iconic strongholds falls short, it forces reassessment across other key states and voter blocs. The scramble in Texas is therefore not just a localized issue, it is a warning signal for the campaign as a whole. National strategists are watching closely, recalculating voter models and advising state teams on how to shore up support in other critical areas. Ultimately, the story coming out of Trump's campaign is clear. A massive loss in Texas has forced a reckoning. From frantic strategy sessions to defensive public messaging, the scramble underscores the pressures of modern political campaigns where no lead is permanent and no narrative is safe. The scramble is ongoing, and the question now is whether the campaign can stabilize before momentum is lost entirely. The shockwaves from Texas are spreading far beyond state lines. What happened in the Lone Star State is not just a local story, it carries profound implications for the national political landscape, signaling potential vulnerabilities for Donald Trump's campaign across the country. For decades, Texas has been treated as a bedrock of Republican electoral strategy, a place where victories were assumed and momentum was generated. Now, the loss there forces a dramatic reassessment of assumptions, strategies, and expectations for the upcoming election cycle. Political analysts are pointing to Texas as a critical warning sign. The state has long functioned as a political firewall, providing both electoral votes and a psychological boost to campaigns. Losing or underperforming in such a stronghold disrupts the narrative of inevitability and forces strategists to reconsider which battlegrounds are truly safe. If a state like Texas, with its traditionally high turnout among conservative voters, is now competitive, it raises questions about the stability of Trump's support in other key regions, from Florida to Pennsylvania and beyond. The ripple effect on campaign strategy is immediate and tangible. Advisors are reportedly recalculating voter turnout models, adjusting demographic targeting, and reassessing messaging that was previously assumed to resonate. Texas's loss is forcing the campaign to invest more resources into areas that were considered secure, potentially diverting attention and funds from traditional battlegrounds. In short, one state's results are reshaping the map of where effort, time, and money must be concentrated to maintain competitiveness. Beyond strategy, the loss also carries symbolic weight. For voters and political observers alike, Texas has long represented stability and dominance. Losing there sends a signal that Trump's coalition is not as solid as previously thought, creating an opportunity for opponents to frame him as vulnerable on a national scale. The narrative is now shifting from one of inevitability to one of uncertainty, a narrative that could influence voter sentiment in multiple states, particularly among independents and moderates who may have assumed the campaign's trajectory was unshakable. National implications extend to fundraising as well. Texas has historically been a hub for major donor contributions and political organizing. Campaign insiders are now facing the challenge of reassuring donors and maintaining momentum, while also strategizing how to prevent similar setbacks in other strongholds. The loss has prompted a renewed focus on outreach and coalition building, with the aim of shoring up support and ensuring that other key states do not follow Texas's unexpected trend. Political commentators emphasize that this moment highlights the broader evolution of American electoral politics. Demographic shifts, voter mobilization efforts, and changing political attitudes are increasingly impacting even the most secure states. Texas's loss illustrates that no candidate can rely solely on past performance or historical dominance. Every state must be earned, and voter behavior cannot be taken for granted. The campaign must adapt or risk facing similar surprises elsewhere. Ultimately, the implications of Texas's outcome reach far beyond the state itself. Losing a cornerstone of the Republican map forces a reevaluation of strategy, messaging, and national voter dynamics. It also reshapes the narrative, challenging the perception of invincibility that has defined Trump's political brand. In a campaign where momentum and perception are everything, the Lone Star State's results are a stark reminder. No stronghold is permanent, and the national landscape can change in an instant. Tonight, what's happening behind the headlines is just as telling as the numbers themselves. Donald Trump's massive loss in Texas isn't just a strategic setback, it's a trigger for panic that is rippling through his campaign and his broader political operation. Analysts say the signs are unmistakable. Escalated rhetoric, aggressive attacks on opponents, and an increasingly defensive media presence all point to a candidate feeling political pressure in a place he once considered untouchable. This is not normal campaign confidence. This is the unmistakable signal of a team under stress. The first indication of panic is visible in messaging. Social media posts, rally speeches, and interviews have taken on a more urgent, combative tone. Where once the campaign projected inevitability, now there's an almost frenetic effort to control the narrative and reassure supporters. Every statement is scrutinized, every comment amplified, as aides and advisors rush to stem the perception of vulnerability. Political commentators describe this as a classic pattern. When campaigns lose their footing in core areas, reaction often turns defensive, even overcompensating, as leaders attempt to assert control. Beyond messaging, the behavior of campaign advisors and allies further underscores the pressure. Reports indicate a flurry of internal meetings, rapid strategy adjustments, and reallocation of resources to shore up support in other critical states. Behind the scenes, the scramble is described as intense, with long hours and high stakes, as the team tries to contain fallout before it spreads nationally. Even within Trump's base, Murmurs of concern are evident, signaling that political pressure is not only external but also internal, forcing leaders to address doubts within their own ranks. The loss in Texas also has psychological consequences. For a candidate who has long cultivated an image of dominance and control, a high-profile setback in a key stronghold can shake confidence. Political psychologists note that such moments often trigger visible signs of stress, from defensive messaging to impulsive attacks on opponents and media critics. In the current environment, Trump's increasingly combative rhetoric can be read as an attempt to regain control of a narrative that is slipping away, rather than a reflection of strategic initiative. National political analysts are watching closely, noting that panic in one state can ripple across the broader campaign. Momentum is fragile, and perception is critical. A campaign perceived as struggling in traditionally secure areas risks emboldening opponents and discouraging undecided or moderate voters. The signs of pressure in Texas, ranging from aggressive messaging to internal scrambling, are therefore not just local issues. They have implications for the entire national landscape, reshaping strategy, morale, and voter expectations. Ultimately, the story emerging from Texas tonight is clear. The loss is more than a tally of votes. It is a reflection of mounting political pressure and a campaign grappling with its vulnerabilities. The escalated rhetoric, defensive strategies, and visible signs of panic all indicate that this is a turning point, one that could redefine the trajectory of Trump's campaign and shift the broader political conversation. In the high-stakes world of national politics, when a cornerstone stronghold shows cracks, panic often follows, and tonight the evidence is unmistakable. Texas sent a message, and Washington is listening. No candidate owns a state forever, and no political movement is immune to change. This massive loss doesn't just rewrite the map, it reshapes the narrative. And as the dust settles, one thing is clear: the road ahead just got a lot more uncertain for Donald Trump.